The Russian apartment bombings were a series of explosions that hit 4 apartment blocks in the Russian cities of Bayansk, Moscow and Volgodonsk in September 1999, killing 307 and injuring more than 1,700 people and spreading a wave of fear across the country. The bombings, together with the Dagestan War, led the country into the Second Chechen War. The blasts hit Bayansk on the 4th of September, Moscow on the 9th of September and the 13th of September, and Volgodonsk on the 16th of September. A similar explosive device was found and defused in an apartment block in the Russian city of Ryazan on the 22nd of September. The next day, Prime Minister of Russia Vladimir Putin praised the vigilance of the inhabitants of Ryazan and ordered the air bombing of Grozny, which marked the beginning of the Second Chechen War. According to the official version and sentences of judicial authorities of Russia, acts of terrorism were organized and financed by heads of the illegal armed group Islamic Institute, Caucasus. 36 hours later, 3 FSB agents who had planted this device were arrested by the local police. The incident was declared to be a training exercise. These events led to allegations that the bombings were a false flag attack perpetrated by the FSB in order to legitimize the resumption of military activities in Chechnya and bring Vladimir Putin to the presidency. Parliament member Yuri Shekotchkin filed 2 motions for a parliamentary investigation of the events, but the motions were rejected by the Russian Duma in March 2000. An independent public commission to investigate the bombings was chaired by Duma deputy Sergei Kovalev. The commission was rendered ineffective because of government refusal to respond to its inquiries. 2 key members of the Kovalev Commission, Sergei Yushchenkov and Yuri Shekotchkin, have since died in apparent assassinations. The commission's lawyer Mikhail Trapashkin was arrested. The official Russian investigation of the bombings was completed in 2002 and concluded that all the bombings were organized and led by Ashemaz Gotchiev, who remains at large, and ordered by Islamist warlords Ibn al-Khattab and Abu Omar al-Saif, who have been killed. 5 other suspects have been killed and 6 have been convicted by Russian courts on terrorism-related charges. Yuri Felshtinsky, Alexander Litvinenko, Boris Berezovsky, David Satter, Boris Kogolomitsky, Vladimir Pribilovsky, and the secessionist Chechen authorities claimed that the 1999 bombings were a false flag attack coordinated by the FSB in order to win public support for a new full-scale war in Chechnya, which boosted Prime Minister and former FSB Director Vladimir Putin's popularity, and brought the pro-war Unity Party to the State Duma and Putin to the presidency within a few months. This theory has been criticized by Robert Bruce Ware, Henry Plater-Zyberk, and Simon Sarajian. Previous threats and bombings. A bomb detonated in a crowded market in Vladikaukas, North Ossetia, Alania on 19 March 1999, killing 62 and injuring many. A Finnish journalist who in mid-August 1999, before the bombings, traveled to the village of Karamäki in Dagestan, interviewed some villagers and the military commander General G. Rolik. The journalist wrote, "The Wahhabis trucks go all over Russia. Even one wrong move in Moscow or Makhachkala, they warn, will lead to bombs and bloodshed everywhere." According to the journalist, the Wahhabis had told him, "If they start bombing us, we know where our bombs will explode." In the last days of August, the Russian military launched an aerial bombing of the villages. Bombings. Overview: 5 apartment bombings took place and at least 3 attempted bombings were prevented. All bombings had the same signature, judging from the nature and the volume of the destruction. In each case the explosive RDX was used, and the timers were set to go off at night and inflict the maximum number of civilian casualties. The explosives were placed to destroy the weakest, most critical elements of the buildings and force the buildings to collapse like a house of cards. The terrorists were able to obtain or manufacture several tons of powerful explosives and deliver them to numerous destinations across Russia. Moscow Mall on 31 August 1999, at 2000 local time, an explosion took place in Okhotny Ryad shopping center on Marnesnaya Square, Moscow. One person was killed and 40 others injured. According to FSB, the explosion had been caused by a bomb of about 300 kilograms of explosives. On 2 September 1999, an organization named the Liberation Army of Dagestan claimed responsibility for the explosion and threatened to continue terrorist acts until Russian army left Dagestan. According to FSB, the explosion was ordered by Chechen leader Shamil Bashayev, who had financial disagreements with the owner of Okhotny Ryad shopping center, Chechen businessman Umar Jabrailov. Binaksh, Dagestan on 4 September 1999, at 2200, a car bomb detonated outside a 5-story apartment building in the city of Binaksh in Dagestan, near the border of Chechnya. The building was housing Russian border guard soldiers and their families. 64 people were killed and 133 were injured in the explosion. Another car bomb was found and defused in the same town. The defused bomb was in a car containing 2,706 kilograms of explosives. It was discovered by local residents in a parking lot surrounded by an army hospital and residential buildings. Moscow, Pekutniki on 9 September 1999, shortly after midnight local time, at 2000 GMT, 300 to 400 kilograms of explosives detonated on the ground floor of an apartment building in southeast Moscow. The 9-story building was destroyed, killing 94 people inside and injuring 249 others, and damaging 19 nearby buildings. A total of 108 apartments were destroyed during the bombing. An FSB spokesman identified the explosive as RDX. Residents said a few minutes before the blast 4 men were seen speeding away from the building in a car. Russian President Boris Yeltsin ordered the search of 30,000 residential buildings in Moscow for explosives. He took personal control of the investigation of the blast. Putin declared the 13th of September a day of mourning for the victims of the attacks. Moscow, Kashirskoye Highway on 13 September 1999, at 5 a.m. A large bomb exploded in a basement of an apartment block on Kashirskoye Highway in southern Moscow, about 6 kilometers from the place of the last attack. This was the deadliest blast in the chain of bombings, with 119 people killed and 200 injured. The 8-story building was flattened, littering the street with debris and throwing some concrete pieces hundreds of meters away. Moscow. Attempted bombings. According to FSB Public Relations Director Alexander Zhdanovich and Oksana Yablokova of the Moscow Times, official investigators defused explosives on Borisovskaya Prudy Street in Moscow the 14th of September 1999. Yuri Felshtinsky and Alexander Litvinenko added a site in the Lublino district and another in Karpotnya to the list of caches. Sata wrote that 3 attempted bombings were prevented. According to the messages received by Felshtinsky and by Prima News Agency from someone claiming to be Shemaz Gotchiev, on 13 September 1999, a bomb was defused in a building in the Karpotnya area. A warehouse containing several tons of explosives and 6 timing devices was found at Borisovskaya Prudy. The author of the messages wrote that he called the police and warned about the bombing locations, which helped to prevent a large number of further casualties. Gotchiev or his impersonators claimed that he was framed by his old acquaintance, an FSB officer who asked him to rent basements as storage facilities at 4 locations where bombs were later found. Volgodonsk. A truck bomb exploded on 16 September 1999, outside a 9-story apartment complex in the southern Russian city of Volgodonsk, killing 17 people, and injuring 69. The bombing took place at 5:57 a.m. Surrounding buildings were also damaged. The blast also happened 9 miles from a nuclear power plant. Prime Minister Putin signed a decree calling on law enforcement and other agencies to develop plans within 3 days to protect industry, transportation, communications, food processing centers and nuclear complexes. Ryazan incident at 20:30 on the 22nd of September 1999. A resident of an apartment building in the city of Ryazan noticed 2 suspicious men who carried sacks into the basement from a car with a Moscow license plate. He alerted the police, but by the time they arrived, the car and the men were gone. The policemen found 3 sacks of white powder in the basement, each weighing 50 kilograms. A detonator and a timing device were attached and armed. The timer was set to 5:30 a.m. Yuri Tkachenko, the head of the local bomb squad, disconnected the detonator and the timer and tested the 3 sacks of white substance with her Mo2 gas analyzer. The device detected traces of RDX, the military explosive used in all previous bombings. Police and rescue vehicles converged from different parts of the city, and 30,000 residents were evacuated from the area. 1,200 local police officers armed with automatic weapons set up roadblocks on highways around the city and started patrolling railroad stations and airports to hunt the terrorists down. At 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd of September 1999, the explosive engineers took a bit of substance from the suspicious-looking sacks to a firing ground located about 1 mile away from Ryazan for testing. During the substance tests at that area, they tried to explode it by means of a detonator, but their efforts failed. The substance was not detonated, and the explosion did not occur. At 5 a.m., Radio Russia reported about the attempted bombing, noting that the bomb was set up to go off at 5:30 a.m. In the morning, Ryazan resembled a city under siege. Composite sketches of 3 suspected terrorists, 2 men and a woman, were posted everywhere in the city and shown on TV. At 8 a.m., Russian television reported the attempt to blow out the building in Ryazan and identified the explosive used in the bomb as RDX. Vladimir Rushilo announced later that police prevented a terrorist act. A news report at 4 p.m. reported that the explosives failed to detonate during their testing outside the city at 1900. Vladimir Putin praised the vigilance of the inhabitants of Ryazan, and called for the air bombing of the Chechen capital Grozny in response to the terrorism acts. He said. Later, the same evening, a telephone service employee in Ryazan tapped into long-distance phone conversations and managed to detect a talk in which an out-of-town person suggested to others that they split up and make your own way out. That person's number was traced to a telephone exchange unit serving FSB offices. When arrested, the detainees produced FSB identification cards. They were soon released on orders from Moscow. On the 24th of September, FSB Director Nikolai Patrushev announced that the exercise was carried out to test responses after the earlier blasts. The Ryazan FSB reacted with fury, and issued a statement saying, FSB issued a public apology about the incident.